Resident Evil 7 is taking the series in a very interesting new direction, and the Resident Evil 7 E3 reveal was undoubtedly one of the stronger moments of E3, and of course the demo beginning hour has seen a lot of excitement and buzz surrounding it, both at the event and of course afterwards, with people trying it and getting very hyped for the VR version. Now, I have a few comments regarding the future of Resident Evil from the Capcom European boss Katsuhiko Ichi, and he talked about various things. We'll link the full interview in the description below this video, but he talked about how it's very much going to be playable in both VR and non-VR settings. And he said, quote, "It depends on the person. Some people might play part of it in VR, some people might play it entirely in virtual reality, and some might play it entirely on the screen. It's a choice." When creating the game, the entire development team approached it as a normal non-VR game and put in plenty of frightening jump moments. Having said that, obviously from a testing standpoint, we are making sure we are not putting people in danger for real. Now obviously one of the things I said at the start of the video is that it is a very different game in comparison to the rest of the series, especially more so when you compare it to its direct predecessor, the big disappointment that was Resident Evil 6. This didn't really go down terribly well with fans. It wasn't that great a game at all, to be honest, especially when it's a Resident Evil game. It just wasn't very good in my opinion, and many people's opinions, and Resident Evil 7 is definitely a bit controversial with its massive change of direction, but it seems like they're very much going back to survival horror, and he echoes this in his comments here. He said, quote, "We know that Resident Evil 6 was a bit of a letdown for core fans, but when you consider the whole universe, we do cater for a different taste. For the main series, it was definitely a good move to go back into survival horror, but perhaps there's not a lot to prove exactly because there have been good games, although not necessarily in the genres that fans wanted. After Resident Evil 6, we asked, what is Resident Evil? What is its essence? And what are fans expecting? Resident Evil 7 is our conclusion." We've been listening more to the community over the last few years. The first Resident Evil was about fear in the face of danger. It was more on an emotional level than a gameplay or story level. The team in Japan said, how do we recreate that emotional response today? So the first person perspective was a natural direction. We talk about the game in the coming weeks and link the game with the wider series, but ultimately Resident Evil is survival horror, and 7 is a survival horror game. Now that's pretty much all I wanted to touch on from the interview here today. The only other thing he addressed is that they are going to be looking at bringing back some older games. For example, as I said, been listening a bit more to the community and how, you know, Resident Evil 2 is being remade thanks to the continuous yelling over the last few years from fans. And while he didn't name any names, they are looking at bringing some other games back as well. So, interesting stuff. Capcom have a wide variety of games they could bring back and remake or remaster or whatever. I'm curious to see what's going on, but really I just want to see more gameplay from Resident Evil 7, but some actual gameplay from the Resident Evil 2 remake and a release date for that as well. I mean, if Resident Evil 7 is coming out in February, then we might see a 2017 release date for Resident Evil 2. That could be interesting, maybe a sort of Christmas or sort of August kind of release date. That would be cool. Either way, some gameplay would be nice, maybe at next year's E3. We'll have to see, but the future of Resident Evil is looking a lot more positive than it did. Like, I would have said that Resident Evil was pretty much done, like, especially after Umbrella Corps was announced. I was just like, really? Okay, Resident Evil's dead, RIP. But maybe not so. Maybe Capcom have just been taking the time to think seriously about what the direction they want to take, and depending on whether or not Resident Evil 7 is good, they could be bringing Resident Evil back firmly into survival horror. So we'll have to see what happens there, but thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.